So, welcome back. This is part 2 of our 3-part series where I essentially walk you through my hiring for newbies. Basically, if you are a first-time recruiter or hiring manager, or you fall somewhere in the hiring process as an interviewer yourself, this is based on my experience of having built and managed these processes. And I want to share these things with you in a more accessible way and as much basic but straightforward detail as possible. And the first part was essentially the kickoff of the process: how to write and assess a job description, who to go to talk about what, how to curate who you want on your interview panel and how you go about that, and all the little things that need to take place behind the scenes to help you get to this next scary part, which is interacting with the actual candidate. As a recruiter or hiring manager, this is your next biggest hurdle: the assembling of your Avengers, your hiring team. This can kind of take place over time. You swap people in and out, all kinds of stuff to make sure that the interview process is as smooth as possible, obviously for the candidate, but for you as a hiring team or hiring manager or recruiter. But you also don't want it to always be evolving in that way, right? Where you kind of can't keep track of who and what is where in your hiring process. So it can bleed into your interviewing of candidates, but you don't want it to be the entire time that you're doing that. There's a lot of stuff you have to consider. So here's my 3 core ones that I look at when I myself am assembling an interview team or am helping a manager or another recruiter do so. Your first big element is cross collaborators. These are the people who may be slightly above, maybe right at, or maybe just below the level or experience that you're hiring for, but these people are the best because they are hands-on every day, all day, right? They know the bells and whistles. They know shortcuts. They know all the little things that make you look good if you're the hiring manager in this scenario, right? But also makes a recruiter look good, because if this person was sourced, especially versus a candidate coming through on their own, this is a win-win for everybody. You want to make sure that your cross collaborators are a part of this process. The varied levels in seniority also really helps with the diversifying of questions that are asked to candidates. Almost all of us have been in some kind of interview process where you talk to the recruiter, the hiring manager, and maybe like 2 or 3 people on a panel over whatever window of time, and you've been asked the same question the entire time. You can only answer that so many times. Don't do it to other people, right? Having a range of experiences and maybe people who work adjacent to the team that you're hiring for, not always directly on it, helps smooth over the conversation as well. It eases tension. Again, you're not repeating questions, and the process is a little bit more enjoyable. Interviewing is very nerve-wracking for everybody involved. Let's make it a little bit smoother. Having experience interviewing is also key. It's not the end-all be-all. It is a little bit higher up on the list of just kind of important things. That doesn't mean it shouldn't be closed off to people who maybe you think would do really well with interviewing candidates on a hiring team of any sort, or having learning and development, some kind of program in place that caters to interview training and how to engage with people, both internally and candidates externally. If your company is large enough, or someone is experienced enough at building out something like that, then obviously that's a big help. Use that. And I think especially if you're a hiring manager in this scenario, that's really, really important to call out that you want to develop people to help ease your decision-making process, because these people report to you at the end of the day. Those are my core 3 things that I am looking for when I'm coaching or helping someone develop their interview process and their TA process overall. Something that really helps with this is having an interview matrix. What is that? It's essentially a tool that helps you standardize and simplify everything that I just said and what I'm about to say going forward, right? So You can align on criteria. You can assign focus areas that you want certain people within your interview process / timeline to assess based on their skill sets and their level of experience and contributions to the team and the company. It promotes consistency across the process itself. People know they may or may not be called upon to review something or to interview a candidate or to talk to a recruiter or hiring manager to get their point of view on anything that's really going on in the process. So the following, I'll call it 2 examples, 1 and 1A, of an interview matrix is one that I actually designed a while ago that is still pretty relevant. And it is if you were hiring for a software engineer, your team is made up of 4 people. Your first round is with the recruiter. It's your 30 to 45 minute window, whichever one you're more comfortable with, that allows you the most time to receive and exchange whatever information you want with the candidate about the company, the role, any eligibility questions, legal ones, reviewing the salary, anything that the candidate and you need to know as far as the introduction to what life will be like working there, hopefully long term. So your second round is your hiring manager. I always like having the hiring manager go after the recruiter instead of having a panel review after the recruiter, because your hiring manager is your shield for the team. They're the person that is essentially setting the expectation for what it's like to work with them and for them as a leader. You can get a little bit more technical about the skills and working requirements. You get a little bit more behavioral in nature as far as questions go when you're talking to a candidate. You are also responsible for making sure that the candidate knows what may or may not come next, right? We'll go to the extreme end of things. If this person definitely is someone you want to be, you want to have interviewed by the team, then you let them know that either you or the recruiter will be organizing that and setting that up. If it's the other end of that extreme where it's like, hey, let's just cut and dry right now, I don't think either one of us are gonna make it shake here, tell them that in that interview. Either way, make sure if you're the hiring manager, you tell the recruiter or whoever is admitting the role for you in HR. So everybody's on the same page and the same message gets across to whoever needs to be involved. Which leads me to my third round, which is, in this particular scenario, a more senior engineer, maybe someone who's just been there longer, and a product manager. Those 2 people work really well together because the product person is coming with all the feedback and your engineer is a person designing based on said feedback, right? So in this scenario, those are the 2 best people to have in the same room or at least on the same panel. You're talking about working styles, philosophies, and methods of coding. You're maybe doing some whiteboarding, doing some coding in real time. While looking at all those things, you're also evaluating compatibility, how well this person communicates and how well you communicate with them. All the little things that this new hire, if they are, especially if they're a manager, but if they're not a manager and they're an individual contributor, this is your boots on the ground team. They're the ones touching everything every day. So this is where you start to establish the technical capabilities alongside the personalities meshing well enough to get this person closer to being a part of your team. Let's talk about etiquette. In recent years, a lot of job seekers have been experiencing a lack thereof. And while we can go off about the market and vulnerabilities and just all the things that has been spoken on 1,000,001 times, including by myself and have experienced myself, a lot of this really comes back to just core things not being relayed. And even furthermore, especially in smaller places that can't afford it or just doesn't have the time dedicated to it, there's no interview training. So you are just repeating a cycle. Your interview etiquette is the actual first impression a candidate has of you and everyone you're connected to, including the company, whether you realize it or not. It's also the first thing that candidates pick up on, whether either of you realize it or not. Making sure you show up the way you need to show up and prepared to engage again with so many strangers throughout any given window of time. It creates a positive experience just in general, but it helps protect the employer brand because you're hoping I'm hoping you're not saying anything crazy. Candidates, let's say they, regardless of whether they get hired or not, they're going to talk about displays. Like, yeah, I had a dope interview experience here. They might have something open. Let me see if I could put you on if it makes sense. Those two things combined help reduce any kind of legal risk, again, because you're not saying or doing anything crazy between each other as far as being a candidate and an interviewer goes, and you're limiting both implicit and unconscious bias. You're getting prepared to spend the important time that you have, the very short time that you have, talking about the role of the company and what everybody's going to be doing at the same time, more or less. Before you log into that Zoom room or walk into that conference room, be prepared. Make sure you have the candidate's profile or their resume on hand, somewhere where you can see it. How familiar are you with the job spec itself? Do you have questions prepared based on not just the role, but like the candidate's experience? All those things are really good to ask yourself, and it's kind of like a pocket check before you leave the house, before you engage again with a complete stranger who you may not see again, because you're not going to hire everybody you interview, right? Making sure the overall atmosphere is comfortable as well, to make sure that, again, we're reducing nerves, everybody's on track, and you can have a pretty smooth conversation. Don't be late. That's rude. Obviously, things are going on and people are forgiving and all that stuff, but try to keep that as few as possible, right? Making sure if it's a Zoom room, you are there before that person jumps in it, right? If you're in person, meet them at the door, or whatever your situation is that obviously is safe, but is your style also. I think that's really important. If you're doing things remotely, make sure all your tech is working. Obviously, things happen, have a backup plan, but a constant habit of either showing up late to the Zoom room or fiddling around while the candidate is just kind of sitting there staring at you and they kind of have all their ducks in a row. It's just uncomfortable. It's unsettling. So do your best to make sure things are in working order. And then set expectations. Be vocal about any kind of hard stops. So neither one of you are disrespecting someone else's time, even if you are having a good conversation. But also, is this interview more behavioral? Is it technical? How hands-on or hands-off is it? Is there an assessment somewhere? What are you going to be asking? The panel, the time frame, all of that stuff. And again, depending on where you fall as the interviewer in the process, that can mean different things, but it should still happen. Another thing that's really important before I move on to the final segment is basically keeping the conversation going, right? Let's say you ask a question and that candidate gives an answer and you're still kind of lost on, what they might be trying to relay, because they might be nervous, or they just, they're afraid to say that they may not have a full answer, or they're just trying to make something make sense and it might not be what you're expecting, but their answer is still relevant. Ask clarifying questions. You do that in every conversation with a friend or a significant other, whatever that looks like. Do it to candidates. This person may be working with you. Show an interest in what they're trying to say and your willingness to make it make sense, just like they're trying to do. You're the stranger to them in a scenario because they are trying to impress and all the other things that go into that. But the other way obviously is true too, for you, because you want to show this person, as the conversation evolves, that you are not only experienced in what you do and how you do it at this specific level or organization, whatever it is. It helps them kind of build on their question base as well, or maybe open up a little bit more, reduce the nerves that they showed up with, to try and, maybe have a life-changing moment when they get sent an offer letter, right? Take notes also. You want to make sure your notes are some kind of put together. Obviously, let the candidate know so they don't think that you're ignoring them in any capacity. And most of the time, you're both taking notes anyway, hopefully. So that's not really a huge issue, but just, be, again, courteous. We're talking about etiquette. Take notes. Do your best to capture your thoughts in real time, because you will be using this feedback in your debrief process with the rest of your hiring team. And especially if you're not the hiring manager or the recruiter, you are, again, the person that is hands-on every day if you're a part of this hiring crew. So you want to make sure that as much information as possible that is relevant to the role in the company and the conversation you had is being relayed amongst X number of people that you're in your debrief with. And again, in the conversation with a thank you, I personally don't need a thank you note or anything extra like that. But this person took time out of their day, probably from a job they already have or dealing with their kids, or they had to make some kind of adjustment. Whether they have or not isn't up for you to like decide, but this person shared their time with you. Say thank you just like you expect them to say thank you to you for spending time with them. Debriefs, etiquette, and somewhat structure. After you've had a few rounds of candidates make it through a certain way into your hiring process, you should have regularly scheduled debriefs. And again, that can change in frequency depending on the volume of people that you're interviewing and whatever that may look like for you. This is where you're discussing feedback for all the people you've interviewed, again, in a window of time leading up to this debriefing. Making the final decision is the hardest part for the hiring manager, because you're having all these thoughts about like, all right, especially if you're a first timer, I might hire the wrong person. You absolutely will. That's going to happen a lot of times in your career. But again, the very beginning of this hiring process for you, your team, your organization really helps you kind of sharpen that skill over time of who you should say yes, maybe, and no to. All your notes and feedback, if you have an applicant tracking system that's robust enough or at all, it should be put in there. Best practice I like to have set up as far as settings go is if a candidate has been in an interview process already, let's say maybe they have talked to the recruiter and the hiring manager and their panel interview is next up. The panelists shouldn't be able to see the recruiter or the hiring manager's feedback. All kinds of biases just come slipping in there, right? If that's not a feature or you don't know how to find that feature, that's obviously fine. I would give warning, especially in your search kickoff, which we talked about in the beginning, in the first video. You want to make sure that's established. Like, hey, don't go digging. Your thoughts are your own and keep it on point about what we're interviewing for and who we're interviewing. Be objective in your statements. Things like just not liking a candidate can be valid, but like, is that true? Or did you wake up on the wrong side of bed that morning? Did you not drink all your coffee before you talk to this person? Anything can make that feel like the vibe is off or they're not a culture fit, right? Also, don't say things like, I'd go get dinner or drinks with them. Depending on who you just interviewed, that's walking a real thin line. So don't do that. Again, they're not professional. It's not about the role. It's not about the organization. Keep the session on topic. Keep your feedback on topic. And that is about the candidate and the organization and what you're hiring for. Having a well-structured agenda for this is really good. One that everyone agrees on beforehand. Having a moderator in a debrief to keep time and obviously collect everyone's thoughts and help organize any kind of scoring or whatever it is your system and your process allows for. Your moderator should spend a couple minutes reviewing the evaluation criteria, the agenda for the debrief and all of that. You want to give about, let's say you're doing a half-hour debrief, right? Give 15 to 20 minutes for everybody to get their thoughts and notes out on the table, just so if anything that pops up, maybe one person noticed and the other didn't, or whatever that looks like for you, you can actually create such a great feedback system amongst yourselves on the back end, where like maybe after the debrief you're like, okay, what kind of questions did you ask? And now we're sparking a conversation and we're creating a culture of 360 feedback without having to constantly push for it. Any kind of extra time that might be at the end of that meeting, use it to resolve any kind of, we'll call it a beef, but any kind of differences of opinions that you have on a candidate or a number of candidates that you were just talking about, and giving a clear idea or a clearer idea of what the team and the hiring manager is looking for, and getting the decision maker, again, typically the hiring manager, a clearer idea of if they should say yes or no to somebody. If it is a no, I strongly recommend that between the HM and the recruiter, you figure out who's communicating and what, and when, but do it within a 48-hour window. Doesn't really matter how many candidates are coming up behind them or anything of the sort. You can make changes later if you change your mind, if that person is still available, and if they want to say yeah. Again, third part, we'll get there. Everything about this, as far as communicating with a candidate, should be fast. A waiting period of a week or 2 weeks is a lot. It's very stressful, and again, you would not want to be in that situation if you were the candidate yourself. So, the golden rule: if you are the hiring manager or the recruiter reviewing this at your organization or your team, make sure you and the recruiter, or vice versa, are the only ones that know anything about salary. While you can't tell someone they can't talk about their salary, sharing someone else's salary is personal information. And I'm gonna just say it like this: you're not built for the blowback of that, right? If it gets found out. So make sure that things like that, any kind of negotiation, any kind of compensation elements that are happening in your hiring process, stay between the people who need to know it, and it is not your direct reports. That's the end of the second piece. There's a lot more coming. The third piece is going to be about the actual decision making, and if it's a yes, if it's a no, what to say, how to say it, and when to perform certain tasks to get the new hire ready for onboarding and all of the things that go into that. So thank you for sticking around, and I will see you in the final video.